But certainly in the last few months, as the referendum date has been set, there's been a lot of debate amongst all aspects of our society. And those in the yes corner have said that, by voting yes, we will make sure that there'll be much more employment, that we'll make sure that there'll be monies available for our athletic programs and facilities and social programs and so on and so forth, and that may be true. But those who are determined to vote no have said that yes, but this will come at a tremendous cost. We're going to be paying a penalty in terms of the crime situation, in terms of our social situation. And indeed, many will be paying a great penalty for that yes vote. And as both are presenting their sides and pointing to statistics and so forth and so on, I believe that there's a simpler way of looking at it. I believe that each person ought to ask themselves one simple question. And that question is, are we as a society willing to enrich ourselves, advance our sport programs, social programs, etc., at the expense of the most vulnerable and economically disadvantaged members of society? Let me repeat that again.
What would you like to do?
Are we as a society willing to enrich ourselves, to advance our sports programs and social programs, etc., at the expense of the most vulnerable and economically disadvantaged members of society? It's no secret that those who are most economically disadvantaged in our society are the ones that gamble most. It's also no secret that many of them, their kids don't have groceries on a given week because the father has gone out and gambled away his wages that Friday night. It's no secret that there are many members of our society and families who are going to be evicted from their homes because of a gambling addiction. It's no secret that there are those who won't be able to go to college because their parents saw that playing the numbers was a good, viable economic program instead of saving and investing. This is not the first time that residents of these islands are going to have to make these kind of moral decisions. As you know, Christopher Columbus came in 1492. And shortly thereafter, there was gold discovered in Hispaniola. And what they did was that the helpless indigenous population of these islands, the Arawak Indians, they took them to work the mines in Hispaniola, and 25 years later, not one of them survived. We're talking about moral decisions to protect the most vulnerable in our society. From the 1600s to early 1700s, pirates or privateers roamed this country, especially around Nassau and the harbor. And many innocent sailors and many ocean-going vessels were destroyed simply because the privateers and the pirates wanted the goods that they had. And the governments oftentimes gave their blessings on such activity. After the American Revolutionary War, there are many that left the U.S. and brought their slaves to our country to work the cotton fields. And even though slavery was abolished in 1884, there's still many black Bahamians that suffer still 200 years later from an inferiority complex. These are decisions that we in these islands have had to make, along with our leaders. And of course, the drug trade from the 1970s has really wreaked havoc in our country. Joneses roam the streets. We know where the crack houses are. Our society has suffered, our social fabric has suffered simply because our policemen, our citizens, our business people, sometimes even our politicians have turned a blind eye so that our pockets can be lined and we can have new appliances and so forth and so on, nice houses, nice cars. We have always been in a position where we've had to make these kind of decisions. Unfortunately though, all too often, the morals we've suffered because we've made poor moral decisions so that our pockets can be full. Thomas Stanley, has researched millionaires for many, many, many years. And he's made these observations. He said that there's an indirect relationship between the amount of gambling that you do and your standard of living, the amount of cash that you have. In other words, there's an inverse relationship. In other words, the more you gamble, the less likely it is that you're going to have money. He also said that for every decamillionaire that gambles, there are more than 3 million non-millionaires that gamble. You know, as I looked at some of the press that is going on, watching television and reading newspapers, I'm seeing many people say that, you know what, I'm voting yes for gambling, but I personally don't gamble. And it seems like the more wealthy we are as Bahamians, our position is that we don't gamble, but often for those who vote yes, we're saying that basically that it's not good for me, but it's good for you. In other words, I understand that by design, when I place my money in a lotto or gambling, I am disadvantaged. It's designed so that I lose. So I'm not going to put my money there, but it's okay for you to put your money there. And I don't mind reaping the blessings and the millions from your losses. We don't mind that. We don't mind taking the money that you lose and your family no longer has access to and putting it on our sports program. Now, I love athletes. I love sports. But I don't think it's right for people to be losing their homes and for families to be going hungry just so that we can take monies and put in the area of sports. It seems like somehow we're defeating the purpose. It's important that we as Bahamians begin to realize that a 1 in a million opportunity, and that's what gambling is oftentimes. That's not really an opportunity for us. It's an opportunity for us to be ripped off because we're investing, so to speak, in what is designed to be a losing affair for ourselves. I want to direct your attention to Matthew chapter 23, verse 37. And Jesus was asked by some, and I'm going to read it, verse 44, it said, "Teacher, Moses told us," verse 36 says, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Matthew chapter 22, verse 37. Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. That is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." In other words, it's wrong for me to view gambling as a waste of my resources, but want my neighbor to use all of his resources so that I can benefit and the programs that I'm concerned about benefit also. It's wrong. And as a nation, we need to get to the position where we say, you know what? Right is right. We need to get a position where we now begin to educate our people and show them what financial success really involves. We need to teach them to be financially disciplined. We need to teach them to save. We need to teach them to invest. We need to teach them to use many of the financial tools are available. That's how real wealth is built up. Not by playing cash free or the lotto. Not by doing many of these activities that the yes vote encourages us to do. we understand that there's going to be money available for many things that we would like to do, but at what price? At the price of the most vulnerable members of our society, of their economic future. We throw in their economic future down the toilet literally, so that we can advance some of the programs that we value. By voting no, you will be making real the promises of majority rule. Majority rule said that, our land is now in the hands of the many. No longer are there going to be a few who are going to be benefit, who are going to be privileged and benefit from what our land has to offer. Majority rule says, okay, we are so many thousand Bahamians. We want to create a scenario where everybody is going to be able to benefit. Gambling says that one or two are going to strike it rich, but at the expense of the vast majority of Bahamians. We want everybody to be able to benefit. By voting no, we will say that we want to see the preamble to our Constitution become a reality. It states that our freedoms will be guaranteed by a national commitment to self-discipline, to industry, loyalty, unity, and abiding respect for the Christian values and the rule of law, not by the lock of the drawer. Amen. We want to see these things become realities in our lives. Yes. We want to see our people striving for that lofty goal that Timothy Gibson sang about. Yes. We want to move forward, upward, and onward together. Yes. We want to see all of our people progressing and advancing, not just a few, while the vast majority are going to be destroyed financially. We want to vote no, because we believe that our leaders ought to be responsible leaders. And they ought to not just give us the opportunity to vote and value our freedom to vote, but they also need to provide some direction. Joshua was one of the greatest leaders of the children of Israel. We know the story about how when they went out to spy out the land, there were 12 spies that went out. And 10 of the spies came back and said, you know what, the land is fantastic, but the giants are just too big. And we know that God said that this land is yours, but we don't believe that we can go in and take it. Joshua and Caleb said, listen, the land is fantastic, the obstacles are significant, but we believe that our God said that we will go in, and we believe our God, and we will take him at his word. But as you know, the majority prevailed. And they ran out and they refused to go in. And as you know, they wandered 40 years in the wilderness. Well, sometime later, Joshua had the privilege of leading a new generation into the promised land. And as he was about to move off of the scene, there are some issues that came up. And I just want to read what Joshua had to say to his people. Joshua chapter 24. Joshua chapter 24, verse 14, he says, now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your forefathers worshipped beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your forefathers served beyond the river or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. There's a lot of money being spent. There's a lot of things being said in our communities. But I believe that it's time that we as a people began to take a stand. Not only take a stand, I believe that it's time that we as people of God begin to provide some leadership in our communities, in our cities. No longer is it good enough to say, I believe such and such, but stay in our little corner.
Yeah.
No longer is it good enough for us to be as secret service Christians, as we like to say. But instead, it's time for us to take a stand. And not just take a stand for ourselves and our families, but influence everyone that we have contact with. Our business associates, our friends, those who are on Facebook and so forth. It's time for us to rise up and say that it is not good enough for us to want and aspire to have these great things and want money for sports programs and send our athletes to different places and be able to fund our programs. It's not good enough for us to be able to do that at the expense of the most vulnerable in our society. It just doesn't cut it. I don't want to see my neighbors lose their homes because of gambling addiction. I don't want to see people and children and young children not be able to find lunch this week because all the money was gambled out on Friday night. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see kids not being able to achieve their goals and have a college education. Because we've been told by our government that gambling is a sound financial plan, when they should have been saving and investing. It's time for us to stand up and in the referendum on January 28th say no. It's time for us to say that, you know what, it's time for us to seek more progressive ways of doing things. It's time for us to educate our people. Make them more prepared financially, more financially literate, so that they can make the right decisions for themselves and their families. Yes, I understand that this is the easy way. Yes, I understand that there are people who have the ears of our politicians and who are paying big money to see that they vote yes. But I encourage you to take a stand and vote no and say, we no longer want to have this kind of a history. We're tired of seeing from 1492 the residents of this land being abused. We're tired of it. We want to make a stand in this 40th year of our nation. We want to say enough is enough. We want to make sure everybody is cared for. We want to make sure that everyone stands a chance. We want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to have financial success in the Bahamas in 2013. And by voting yes, you will say just that. In these 15 days leading up to January 28th, I encourage you to do all that you can. To pray. To speak with people that you come into contact with. To donate to the Vote No campaign. To do everything that you can to make sure that the most vulnerable members of our society are protected. That's our responsibilities as believers today. You know, there are different seasons in life. There are different things that come on the horizon that we have to address. But today, we need to ensure that everybody is protected, everybody is safe, and nobody is taken advantage of. You know, that's what our government's supposed to do, you know. They're supposed to make sure that we're all safe. They're supposed to make sure that we're protected. They should not be taking advantage of their people. But as a voice of conscience, on the 28th, let's go over there and let's make our statement. Let's say no to the lotto. Let's say no to the taxing and regulation of industries that are alive and illegal within our cities. Let's say no. Please stand to your feet.